Mr. Speaker, following the elections of November 28, 2011, I think Guyana and Guyanese ventured out into hitherto uncharted waters. And for the first time, our country was being governed by a minority government. There were a lot of uncertainties. There were expectations, there were hope. And I recall clearly that His Excellency, when he addressed the National Assembly, His Excellency Donald Ramatar, clearly pleaded for the cooperation of the legislative arm of government in helping the executive to manage our country. He pleaded for cooperation on all sides, and he had a genuine hope, Mr. Speaker, genuine expectation that things would have worked out well, that the then opposition, the APNU and AFC, would have cooperated with the executive to execute programs that would have been of the benefit to all our people. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, those expectations were short-lived. And we entered into a situation where the doctrine of separation of power, the legislative, the judiciary, and the executive started to get mixed up. And the legislative wanted, Mr. Speaker, to be the executive arm of government. And these things led to what happened, and of course, to May 11th elections 2015. A lot of people had expectations, Mr. Speaker. Political parties had expectations too, including the AFC. And I had a lot of expectations too, Mr. Speaker. And what had happened, some of those expectations also transpired even into agreement. The Cummings-Borg Accord comes to mind readily, where the expectations of the AFC and the APNU were transformed into an accord which sought to, between parties that were not too comfortable with one another, start to document how is it that they would operate. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, they needed this arrangement so as to keep the different partners in line. Unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, Honorable Mr. Nagamutu, will be the first one to say that there are some aspects of the Cummings-Borg Accord that were thrown out of the window. The Prime Minister, sir, had high expectations of chairing the cabinet, had high expectations to have the portfolio of agriculture under his purview, and he was very disappointed, Mr. Speaker, because Mighty Joe would not have any of that. So the Honorable Prime Minister, sir, instead of chairing the cabinet, I think he ended up chairing NCN and GINA and all of that. Something that someone said that Kwame Mackay. So, but he's still chairing, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Prime Minister is still chairing some agencies. I think the Honorable Carl Barrington, Mr. Speaker, Carl Barrington, Greenwich.
Speaker, this was some reluctance that I raised on a point of order, under Order 41. I think a member of Parliament ought not to utter words or say things that are demeaning to other members of the Parliament. And what he's trying to do is to try to speak for the Honorable Prime Minister, purportedly to speak for the Honorable Prime Minister, not to speak for himself. And he is precluded under the standing order from saying things that would constitute any insulting. I'm very thick-skinned, but I do uphold the standing order, and this House shall be governed by the standing order. And of course, not only am I thick-skinned, sir, I can say this as much, that I don't mind being a cat, because it's necessary to deal with those rats over there who try to speak for me.
Mr. Speaker, I rise under the same standing order that the Prime Minister ruled on, and I am offended that he's calling us over here rats. That is the meaning. That is the meaning, and it must be withdrawn. Because you can't be bringing order to the House and imputing motive to people over here. I refuse to be called a rat.
Standing Order 41-4 reads as follows. It shall be out of order to use offensive and insulting language about members of the Assembly. This standing order has been in existence even before the present sitting. I suspect members are very aware of it, and if they are not, I commend it for their consideration and acting accordingly. I thank you. Please proceed, Mr. Seeraj.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome your guidance, as always. I've been a very disciplined member of this House, sir, I can assure you, and I will not seek to give you any trouble whatsoever. Mr. Speaker, I think the Honorable Vice President Carl Barrington Greenwich also had some expectations based on his previous experiences. But I don't think, Mr. Speaker, there were confidence reposed in him to handle the Ministry of Finance. I do know, Mr. Speaker, that he has a lot of expertise in the area of foreign affairs, and I hope that in the future he can become better at handling matters of diplomacy, especially economic diplomacy as it relates to our current affairs with Venezuela. To speak offhand in an offhanded manner, Mr. Speaker, like go to CARICOM when referring to our neighbor, I don't think that was very diplomatic. And it could have very well, sir, ended up in us being the worst off. Sir, I know you're an expert in this area, and I suppose all of us in matters of this nature will seek to get some guidance from you from time to time. And I commend that to the government. Oh. Mr. Speaker, I also know that the Honorable Vice President, Mr. Ali Kopp, also had a lot of expectations. Mr. Speaker is a Vice President. Mr. Ali Kopp, sir, congratulations on being elevated to that position of Vice President. But I do hope that the leader of the House and the Honorable Prime Minister will see that you have a vote next time. I mean, so you must be the first Vice President in this National Assembly without a vote. I hope that can be corrected. So, Mr. Speaker, there have been a lot of expectation. We on this side of the House also expect things to get better as we go along. But having had a look at the budget, sir, we're not too confident. The budget itself could have been a very good one if there were less politics in it. There were less politicization of an otherwise good document. Good in the sense that it built on what was left by the People's Progressive Party civil. But I think the honorable member, Mr. Winston DaCosta Jordan, sir, got carried away with the wave of politicization that was gripping the country at the time he was looking at compiling his speech. And an otherwise good document, I would even go to say excellent document, sir, was marred by the politicization by a person who I knew to be a technocrat. And he tried his best, and he overtried, Mr. Speaker, in bringing politics into his budget speech. And that is why, sir, I can tell you without fear of contradiction that the level of political rhetoric in the document really spoiled it. And I hope if the minister is fortunate to present another document of this nature in the National Assembly, that he will concentrate more on being a technocrat and deal with the technical aspects of the budget. Mr. Speaker, the language sometimes is very good, but we have to deal with the reality, and we have to juxtapose the language and what is being said with the reality that the Guyanese people are experiencing. And that, sir, therein lies the taste of the pudding. I'm not sure whether that's the correct...
The proof is in
the proof. The proof is in the eating of the pudding. So we have to compare the language that is used in the budget as to the reality that we are facing. And so when Honorable Member Jennifer Wade spoke, she spoke a little bit about the reality that farmers are facing hardship. That is not mentioned in the document. The Honorable Member even went on to say that Seeraj would know what she's talking about. I think she was saying loudly that the Honorable Minister Winston Jordan is probably not au fait with some of the plight that the farmers are going through. And I welcome that comment, sir, because I'm a farmer. As a matter of fact, Mr. Speaker, after I finished high school and I sought to travel overseas for further study, my passport, 1988, I think it was, 531728, Felix could check that, Honorable Member, had my profession listed, sir, as a farmer. And there are some out there who would want to say that Seeraj is not qualified to be representative of the rice farming community. Some might even go so far to say, Mr. Speaker, that a farmer should not sit in his house. But I'm telling you, sir, that I am proud that my profession, as listed in that document, stated clearly, farmer. I'm proud of that, sir. And I'm proud that I could stand in this house and say proudly that that was my first official designation. 531728, Mr. Felix, Honorable Member. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Member Jennifer Wade spoke about high price of fuel, the high price of fertilizer. The Honorable Member could check it. The high price of seed paddy, and all these things are affecting farmers, Mr. Speaker. The Honorable Member spoke about the picketing in front of the Parliament last year by farmers. And so there were indeed some people picketing out there. And I did some research, and I saw in the newspaper article, I think was June 28th, sir, the Guyana Times, where mention was made about one of the persons picketing there. In that article, sir, one of the members of the picketing team was accused by the AFC, sir, of misappropriation of funds for the picketing. They were paid to come down here to picket, and then based on the article in the newspaper, sir, it was said that the member of the picketing team draw down on the AFC, and then he draw down on the APNU, and was charged by the AFC, under the constitution of the AFC for misappropriation, and was tried by whatever committee they have, sir, and was told to refund. So those farmers, Mr. Speaker, they did not come here willingly, sir. They were paid to come, and they were paid by an activist of the AFC. And I think that was it. Right. So, Mr. Speaker, whenever the Rice Producers Association mount a picketing exercise, we do it and farmers come willingly. Sometimes I call on them to come and they say they ain't able with that. But I don't go out of my way to pay them to come and do all these things, Mr. Speaker. So, once that is welcome, sir, we have to see how is it that these things play out. And I know that the President, His Excellency David Granger, when he addressed the conference, the Rice Industry Conference at the Otachong Convention, sir, he said, and let me get this right, I don't want to quote the President wrongfully, sir, but he said clearly that, among other things, sir, that what's good for rice is good for Guyana. And at this time, there is no need for confrontation or demonstration. And there is a need for economic diplomacy. I think, sir, that the now chairman of the Gaisuko board, Professor Clive Thomas, also spoke about the need for economic diplomacy. And statements like monkey on our backs, or I don't even know if words of those kind are in the diplomatic jargon. Sorry, you would know much more than me on these matters. But if we're talking about economic diplomacy, the Honorable Foreign Affairs Minister could advise me. Monkey on our back, I don't think, finds a place in diplomatic jargon. And at this point in time, I don't think those things are helpful to our situation. So, Mr. Speaker, His Excellency also spoke about the government don't want to become a banker and the government don't want to bail out the industry. So, sir, these are words that we need to examine in detail as it relates.
Honourable Member, I'll draw to your attention Standing Order 41. Standing Order 41. 6. No member. 41.7, I beg your pardon. President's name shall not be used to influence the Assembly. I draw your attention to it. Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much, sir. I was just, sir, I attended that forum and I was just quoting from my notes some of the comments made by His Excellency. I in no way, sir, sought in any way whatsoever. I will not do it to the post, no matter who's occupying that position, sir. I would never, ever, anytime try to bring disrespect in any way whatsoever to that office. I can assure you of that, sir. Mr. Speaker, I've had the fortune of meeting Mr. Maduro on 2 occasions. I've also met former late President Hugo Chavez. I was privileged to do so and have a little discourse I was in the Pegasus, Honorable Prime Minister. He was here. He came to Guyana. And I was privileged, sir, to meet the Honorable His Excellency, the late President Hugo Chavez. Mr. Speaker, at the National Rice Industry Conference, the the Honorable Minister Noel Holder, sir, and I know this gentleman of known his connection in the agriculture sector, and I have no doubt, sir, that he will do well at the Ministry of Agriculture. I, sir, would also like to bring attention to some of the things that Minister Holder, honorable member, said at that conference. And among other things, sir, he said, I would wish to believe that all stakeholders will foster a renewed partnership after leaving this conference today. End of quote. Sir, I pledge the support of the RPA at that forum. I made a number of statements and a number of requests. I spoke also about the utterances as it relates to the mid-term to long-term plan. And I said those things are not of importance right now. What we need to deal with, Mr. Speaker, is the payments for farmers, the price that they are getting, what we will do with the stocks that we have currently on our hands. And, Mr. Speaker, the next crop is going to, the harvesting will commence in about 2 weeks' time. What are we going to do with that crop? That the conference, sir, need to address these pressing questions. Not to talk about rice flour and down the line. We could talk about those things when we have done away with these pressing current issues, sir. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister also said that the rice industry is at present the most important agriculture industry in Guyana. I agree totally with that, Mr. Speaker. Approximately 61% of agriculture GDP and 21.3% of export earnings. Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Minister of Agriculture had the following to say about the Guyana Rice Development Board, and I quote, the Guyana Rice Development Board, GRDB, has delivered tangible and very concrete results on the ground in the last 5 years. The GRDB has distributed 153,301 bags of paddy. This is seed paddy, sir. It has supported and established 347 farmers' field schools, resulting in improved capability of 9,430 farmers. Conducted 46 farmer exchange visits held with 7,452 farmers participating. It has carried out 328 soil tests for farmers to determine land suitability and nutrition management. Provided management provided government assistance to farmers in the form of seed paddy and fertilizers. I agree with all of those, sir, and I wish to add that the GRDB over the last 20 years has also brought out 15 new varieties. One of them which can be classified as an aromatic line. It's called Maria's Delight for marketing purposes, but its scientific name is GRDB 13. I wish to add also that the extension service of the Guyana Rice Development Board, sir, is second to none in this part of the world. Is second to none. I also wish to add, sir, that every time the industry faces any kind of crisis, the GRDB has always been responsive to the plight of farmers, millers, exporters, and other stakeholders in the industry. Sir, I commend the Honorable Minister of Agriculture for his remarks at the conference. And before I leave this part of the proceeding, Mr. Speaker, I wish to quote him lastly to say that the GRDB's 6-point practice recommendation, and I'm quoting the Minister of Agriculture, sir, recommendation is a move we can all safely say is key to improve rice yields. Farmers who have experimented with the planting methods have more than doubled their yields from 20 to 22 bags to 50 to 80 bags per acre. Sir, I mention these things so that we can have an appreciation of how the Guyana Rice Development Board performed over the last 2 decades. And sir, I want to bring your attention to a Kaicho News article of June 25th, 2015. And I wish to quote from this article, sir, where it was said, "The disclosures were made yesterday by Minister of State Joseph Harmon. He said that the industry has been badly mismanaged. Has been badly mismanaged. There have not been, obviously, communication between the Minister of State, Joseph Harmon, and the Ministry of Agriculture, whether it's in the form of the Honorable Minister of Agriculture or the Permanent Secretary. The official was speaking about the empty PetroCaribe fund, which the new government said that it met when it came to power last month. Quoting, sir, GRDB, Harmon said, was complicit or responsible for rice farmers and millers participating in a multi-billion-dollar rice for oil arrangement with neighboring Venezuela not being paid in recent times. Sir, there is absolutely no link between responsibility of the PetroCaribe Fund and the Guyana Rice Development Board. And we cannot, sir, seek to blame an entity for something that happens somewhere else. It's reckless, irresponsible behavior, sir. For us to go publicly and speak to these matters to achieve, sir, a narrow political end, which is, sir, to deal with the management of the GRDB on grounds that are not sound, that cannot in any way stand up to any form of scrutiny.
What did you do?
Now, Mr. Speaker, the GRDB should have known that the fund was being misused. So the GRDB has no responsibility, has no authority, has no jurisdiction over the PetroCaribe Fund. But sir, 4 farmers, including the gentleman who was charged with misappropriation, came to see the Minister of State from Region 2. They have over 2,600 farmers, sir, in Region 2. 4 of them came who are activists of the AFC and the APNU. And Mr. Harmon, Honorable Member and Minister of State, sought to justify Honorable Retired Colonel or Lieutenant Colonel. Sir, he sought to use mismanagement as an excuse to carry out the request of those 4 who said they're representing 2,600 others, sir, and call for the head of the the GRDB, Mr. Jagnarain Singh. Sir, if you want to fire the man, fire him. But don't try to hoodwink the general public by saying that this gentleman is responsible for mismanagement, something that doesn't fall under his fault. No, sir, but I think this was done deliberately to tell farmers that the fact that you're not getting paid resides with the GRDB and the RPA as justifying the restructuring and the whatever that will evolve into the resignation of the gentleman. So but it is cheap politics to start to do that. So the PetroCaribe fund, to the best of my knowledge, would have accumulated over its course just under 700 million US dollars. Information is not readily available, so it's tougher than extracting teeth, pulling teeth. And even the Honorable Dr. Jagan couldn't help me in this matter. But I think, sir, that it would have been somewhere in the vicinity of 686 or 690 million dollars. And the PetroCaribe arrangement started, sir, in 2005. Rice was not even a part of it. And if the Honorable Minister had done some research, he would have known this and would have sought to deal with PetroCaribe with the appropriate agency. Of that amount, sir, Rice would have accounted for 593 million US dollars, or a little bit more than it. Although Rice became a part of it in 2009. So Rice got the bulk of it. So monies that were used from the account were used even before Rice became a part of it. When former President Barajagde would have met with President Chavez, Hugo Chavez.
You have 10 minutes remaining. I'll remember.
Sir, I hope that the clock was stopped when there was some interruption. You know, sometimes under pressure we miss some of these little things. Thank you very much, sir. So, Mr. Speaker, the PetroCaribe arrangement and misrepresentation of the PetroCaribe arrangement and seeking to lay blame to justify a political move is wrong, sir. It is totally wrong and should not be encouraged. Sir, 25th of June, 2015. In addition to Jagnarain, government also intends to no longer want Dharamkumar Seeraj, General Secretary of the Guyana Rice Producers Association, who is a member of the GRDB Board of Directors. Sir, if you don't want me, you don't want me. That's your prerogative. But I brought attention, sir, to the fact that I'm well qualified to be where I am by stating clearly I have a history, I have a background, and I have worked on broken, sir, with the Guyana Rice Producers Association since 1989. Some of the senior citizens over there would have been middle-aged, about middle-aged in those days. Mr. Speaker, I don't have a difficulty with that. But, sir, I have a difficulty when we can talk about rule of law and respect for the rule of law, and it's mentioned even in the budget. And when we don't practice what we preach, sir, that is when we have a disconnect with what is happening. Sir, and I wish to bring to your attention Act number 10 of 2004, Drainage and Irrigation Act 2004. In this act, sir, under Part 2, that deals with the establishment, organization, duties, and coordination of this entity, as part of the composition of the Board of Directors, sir, it is stated here at 7.2d, 2 directors to be nominated by the Rice Producers Association. I must say, sir, that the Honorable Minister of Agriculture made effort to contact me. We spoke on some matters, and this came into, and he said, Mr. Seeraj, by statute, you're to make representation and provide me with nomination for 2 members of the association to sit on the board of the NDI and 3 on the board of the GRDB. Sir, and the GRDB Act also states clearly that I was supposed to have it here, Mr. Speaker. It is here. And this act is number 15 of 1994, Guyana Rice Development Board Act 1994. It states here too, sir, that the part that deals with the composition, functions, and so on of the board, it states here under 4, provided that there shall be 3 members representing the Guyana Rice Producers Association. Sir, I dispatched letters to this effect, and I must say, sir, that we have not had a response. And I think that the Honorable Minister of Agriculture tried his best, but it would appear that the powers that be were not inclined to go favorably with his representation. Sir, I've had some good experiences. The Hope Relief Canal, I remember clearly, sir, that again I shared the pleasure of the company of the Honorable Minister on June the 13th, when the entire East Coast, Georgetown too, and Mahaika Creek, Maikoni Creek, would have come under threat from the intense rainfall that the Honorable Minister Jordan spoke about in his budget presentation. Could have been devastated. And sir, that I was proud to be there when the Honorable Minister sought to activate the sluices, the doors that release the water into the Atlantic Ocean. So that saved millions in crops and livestock, and it saved lives. And I think that we should applaud the effective operation of the Hope Relief Canal. Sir, as we stand to debate our 2015 budget, there are a number of points that were made by the opposition, by the government, sorry, sir. Honorable Ramjatan spoke about his strategy to deal with, of course, law enforcement, and his famous speech about getting more horses and dogs to help in this campaign. He probably didn't hear the Honorable Jennifer Wade when she said that the criminals come in rat-a-tat-tat-tat. They ain't coming pow-pow, sir. When you're faced with that kind of firepower, as the Honorable Felix would tell you, we have to retaliate with superior quality of firepower. Not too bow wow and a hippity hop down the road, sir. You need to do better than that. And the minister, in trying to justify his claim, spoke about the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. Sir, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police was established way back in the 19th century. Mr. Speaker, at that time, they had to be mounted on horses. They had to be mounted on horses. 1873, the Parliament of Canada, sir, established what was called, established a central police force and sent 150 recruits to Manitoba. And they became known as the Northwest Mounted Police. And on the 1st of February 1920, sir, the Northwest Mounted Police became known as the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. They maintain that name, sir, because they are proud of it. And they're proud of their record. It's not because they're still riding horses. They do that for ceremonial purposes.
I remember you have 5 minutes remaining.
I thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Now, Mr. Speaker, that the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, they go about tackling crime now in state-of-the-art vehicles, flashing lights, bulletproof glass, high-power weapons. They don't track down criminals with horses and tracker dogs. As I want to mention, it probably is for those, some of our street dwellers who practice unhygienic behavior around the city, that we might need the dogs to track them down. Even though I think the clerk was faced with a lot of problems with some of these street dwellers who sitting around here and messing up around the place. But sir, when you're talking about tackling crime, you got to be up to date with what you're talking about, Mr. Speaker. And I think that we got to get some armor for them horses. Mr. Speaker, I think the Minister of Finance made some allocations for for crime fighting, which didn't have anything to do, sir, with making provision for horses and dogs, sir. And, sir, he's adding to the circus, the honorable member, when the General Secretary, Clement Ruiz, sought to, what you call heckling. He said he's going to add a couple of goats. I don't know if he's targeting the General Secretary in any way. Yes. So adding to the horses and the dogs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, here's what the Minister of Finance had to say about fighting crime. And I quote, sir, page 2415. With respect to the security sector, Mr. Speaker, it will be readily appreciated that the law enforcement office of the 21st century uses mobile computers, no horses, over telecommunication networks to access a wide array of information to inform operations. No provisions is made here for horses and dogs. My God, they end up with some Kangal and rice eater. You ain't getting no quality stuff. Mr. Speaker, I continue to quote here. We must therefore equip our security services with the tools and technologies to operate effectively in this modern dispensation. Not to go back to the establishment of the RCMP back in the 19th century. This budget is talking about the 21st century, sir. And we have to be serious about our job. And if the Minister of Public Security is not capable, he should seek advice. And I think advice could be readily found in the form of the former Commissioner of Police, the Honorable Winston Felix. One would have thought, sir, in the consultative process between the APNU and the AFC, you would have given position that goes along with your competence. The Honorable Minister, I think, Mr. Ramjatan, would have spent most of his working life, sir, working as a lawyer, representing those accused of criminal activities and probably representing criminals.
You have 2 minutes remaining.
How much, sir? You
have 2 minutes remaining.
Thank you very much, sir. So, sir, that one would have thought, that, you know, that dealing with competence, that there is a minister now who have to go after criminals in a life before was representing those accused of crimes. One would have thought that the Honorable Winston Felix, who was responsible for going after criminals, would have given that. The Minister of Public Security expected the whole Ministry of Home Affairs. Obviously, he got the bad part of it, Mr. Speaker. The bad part of it, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I don't want to intrude too much on your indulgence, sir, but I want to say, sir, that the document is long on politics, sir. It is short on economics. And when I look at some of the numbers, sir, I remember a remark that was made to me by a gentleman who was chief scientist of the former Rice Resort Station. Honorable Minister Holder will know of this gentleman. Sir, the chief scientist, Leroy Small, sir, agronomist by profession. We were looking at the budget of the Rice Resort Station, and he said, Seeraj, these statistics look like a bikini. So I said, sir, I don't really understand what you mean by that. How can you compare statistics to a bikini? And he said, Mr. Seeraj, these things, Leroy Small, agronomist. And he said, Seeraj, I'm trying to remember exactly what he told me, sir. And he said that when you're looking at these statistics, they reveal the obvious and conceals the essential. And that is how he equates it. And when I look at these numbers, sir, that quote came to mind readily. And sir, the other day, I was taking my children home, sir, from lessons. And a batchmate of my daughter, I pointed out to them on the road near Campaign Dinosaur that one of these new cars that came in with the 3 wheels. And my daughter friend said to me, so her name is Angelica. I won't say the last name because I think her father is working with the government. I don't want them to knock off the man just because his daughter is classmate with my daughter. So, sir, when I pointed out this 3-wheel car to the children sitting in my car, Angelica said, Mr. Seeraj, that is so wrong. 3 wheels, and look at all these 4 wheels. Mr. Speaker, the budget presentation appears to be a 3-wheel car. So, 4-wheel lane It is so wrong, sir, because of the politics. And I won't comment it, sir. I won't comment it. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.